Hello again. So, you are experiencing the special bonus episode that we decided to make for you due to the fact that we did not give you enough content during the December period up until now. So,
we're deciding to talk shit for another half an hour. 40 minutes.
We are. If you didn't have enough of it already, there's more for you right now. So, I guess I'll start off by just mentioning that when we were chatting about recursion, there was one little thing that I didn't want to go off on too much of a tangent, leading off from that. But it was the nature of the fact that reading it reminded me a lot of playing a video game. When I mentioned the save points and that sort of element of the plot, it made me think about gaming quite a lot when I was reading it. And because it was the Christmas period, and I like to give myself a little bit of time every year to lock myself in a room and be very antisocial and play a video game.
Oh, I love those times.
Yes. I decided to check out a long list of things that were recommended, and obviously there was no way of avoiding hearing about Cyberpunk like everybody else out there, so I gradually got around to getting it running on my PC at the time, which took a bit of effort, but on the lowest graphic settings, let's be honest. That's all I managed to cope with. But I still managed to play that over the Christmas period.
Very cool.
And,
what did you think?
Very glitchy.
So I've heard.
Incredibly glitchy, but I loved it. I thought the environments were brilliant, really immersive. I enjoyed all this different aspects of gameplay. I'm talking about this from the point of view of being somebody who very rarely plays video games. Like we mentioned in that first episode, I explained that I used to be very much into them growing up and at some stage gave up on them for a while. But just mixing a lot of different elements of kind of like first-person shooter and then kind of like sneaky sort of stealth mode of like Metal Gear Solid, that kind of thing. And then that mixed in with RPG sort of elements, things like that Skyrim sort of aspect of it. I know that the team behind it made the Witcher games as well, which I've never played personally. But sort of mix it. And GTA is obviously a massive influence on it because you do 100% feel like you're playing a lot of it feels like GTA at times as well. But I didn't feel like those things got in the way of each other. I thought they kind of merged together quite well. But I'm sure I'm not the first person to have said this. I definitely noticed the fact that it had been rushed out a little bit and certain things infuriated me at times. Like the consistent sort of phone calls and messages coming in for new missions whilst you're trying to actually play a mission and you've got a character like telling you what to do at one stage and then a phone call goes off and you've got another character talking to you on screen whilst the character is telling you like the dialogue for the next mission and you can't hear the other person because the other message is playing over the top of it. It's like, oh, come on, stop.
It's like they're
this.
Trying to do way too much at once and the game was rushed out a little bit. That's what I've been reading. I still haven't bought it. I also haven't bought the PS5 yet. I'm going to wait maybe possibly another year. But that's what I've been hearing. I don't know, but did you enjoy the story though? Because I've even heard I've heard some criticism about the story as well, and that and possibly like Keanu Reeves was maybe not playing the right character.
I think I know what you mean. We both have a friend of ours who's I agree with his opinion. He mentioned something about him feeling like he was miscast, and I kind of do agree with that. I mean, it's still a good performance, and I've seen Keanu in sort of like villainous roles. There was that movie The Gift that I actually love him in that, completely cast against type as like a sort of this alcoholic wife beater. In that there's completely not what you expect him to play, and he does a really great job at that. But with this, like I say, I don't know, it didn't really feel the right match for that persona, like to cast him as an actor. And he 100% has got some kind of deal with them that he's kind of like, I mean, anyone would do it if they were going to get paid all that money. It was like, I want to be a character in a video game, and if I'm going to be a character in a video game, I want to be insanely, ridiculously hard. And I want to make sure that I've got a really cool gun that can just blast the shit out of everything and like have ridiculous armor levels and stuff like that, so nobody can even dent me. Like, because the moments in the game where you play as him, sorry, because I know you've not played some of it yet, but some of the moments in the game where you get to do that, I should have maybe mentioned some spoilers before this, but
okay.
You definitely get to play as him at times, and when you do, like I say, it doesn't really feel like you're playing the game anymore. It just feels like you're playing like this showcase of like, now it's just fun time for me to be Keanu Reeves and just blast the shit out of stuff and not worry about getting dented by anybody in the mission. Like,
it's quite fun the way video games have advanced to the point of we're discussing an actor's casting in a video game, like where they rightly cast in this video game. You know, it's just video games have become so I know, like, I'm going to show my lack of gaming experience by saying that to me, games weren't usually very cinematic or story driven. I know there were story driven games in the past, but I've just noticed in the last 10 years that games have gotten incredibly more cinematic. And it is a visual storytelling medium now. And I think it's probably a big part of the future of visual storytelling, you know? But it's just, I just find it so curious that we often talk now the same way that actors are cast in movies and how their performances are in movies. It's the same in video games now, you know? Yeah. Last of Us, Uncharted, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, these kind of games, Red Dead Redemption, you know, they're just epic stories that you stay with like a TV show for a long time. You might be playing them or watching the cutscenes for a few weeks and you really, really get invested, but it's interactive, you know? So I think there's another
I guess especially with that, when the character in the game itself, that's the difference between that and animation, I'd say, is that, like, I mean, obviously I know it's still animation in a video game, but what I mean is, like, obviously the difference between, I'm not going to use the word cartoon because I think that just gets thrown in there I think that just makes people think, like, oh, this is just stuff for children, which isn't the case at all, as in my opinion, with a lot of animation. But what I'm trying to get at is you don't really say that, but you don't hear people say, like, oh, I can't believe they cast Tom Hanks as Woody in Toy Story. That's ridiculous. Like, it just doesn't suit. Like, you wouldn't say that, would you? Like, even though it's an actor voicing an animated character, where a lot of that is actually the work of the animators as well, is a big part of that performance, especially in things like the Planet of the Apes movies and stuff like that, where it's a perfect marriage between performer and animators, and then both being on their game, like creating a completely believable
It's the motion capture technology that has allowed it to, because they use the same technology now in video games that they used for Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, and which was the technology that kind of revolutionized that kind of animation and visual effect work in film. So, like, if you watch Planet of the Apes, you know, looking at the apes in the film is what you see when you play a video game these days, and it's incredibly realistic. I mean, you know, it's not real, but it definitely doesn't take you out of the story in any way. Now, I don't want to disparage more classic animation video games. You know, like, I know people love, you know, Pokemon games or you know, Mario or things like that, you know, with a more classic style of animation. But for me, these modern day video games, like, I just started playing Red Dead Redemption. I finally started playing it just before Christmas. I got it as a Christmas present last year, and I finally started playing. It shows you how much of a gamer I am. I finally started playing.
I've still not played it myself, so we're probably I'm
that's
far worse.
Cool. But we'll still talk about video games in this podcast, because there are some that I would like to talk about. But, like, it's just incredibly immersive. That's what I find. It's not passive art. It's incredibly interactive, so you feel like you're part of it. And I was listening to a podcast recently enough with the writer-creator of The Last of Us, Neil Druckmann, who was talking about he still finds it fascinating to this day when players will say he'll be watching a video of somebody playing The Last of Us, and they're like, "Oh my god, now I'm playing as Ellie," or like, or now they'll say, "Now I'm Ellie," and he still finds that fascinating. Like, we say we are that person, that character in the story when we're playing them or controlling them, and it gives it that extra bit of attachment, when you get through the story. And yeah, like these big open world games sort of conversely then again to a game like Last of Us, which is very linear and it's a narrative based game where you have to do kind of where the game tells you. You have to go where the game tells you to go. These RPG games are 100% immersive because you kind of build a story yourself, or you get to go about it your own way. So I do think it's a very underappreciated medium. Not that it's underappreciated, but I'd say by wider audiences. And yeah, if I had more time, I would love to play a lot more games. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm the same. And it's like you say, like it's the amount of time that you have to invest into something like that. It's the same thing for me. Like when I say I played Cyberpunk, I played the main storyline out through the main missions until I completed the game as far as that was concerned, and I got to the credit screen. Like I did that, and that for me is enough. Like I would love to go back and spend like God knows how many hundreds of hours like just immersed in doing all the other stuff that's available in that game. But like for me to just pack that in and do it, that was enough for me at that stage. When I was looking it up though, I ended up because I was trying to make that decision on what I did, like I say, because I know I like to get to the end of the year and just have something and then wrap it up if I can in a month, and then it's gone and it's out of the way, and I don't need to kind of worry about me having to fit that into my schedule at any time for the rest of the year, that I can kind of get on with my life almost. I was checking out a list of best games of 2020, and one that came up involved, it was Microsoft's recent version of their flight simulator game. So I ended up watching a lot of YouTube videos of people flying jets, like, and getting quite immersed into that. I ended up watching a lot of these YouTube videos of people playing the game, and I just found myself kind of like just really tranquil, and enjoying being in the environment of an airplane and thinking like, oh, I really want to go on an airplane. I think I want to watch some movies set on planes. So I ended up going on Amazon, and I watched a movie called 7500 with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which is really interesting actually. It's a kind of like almost a chamber piece sort of thing. Like you never depart really with the camera work outside of the cockpit itself. You have some opening sequences of CCTV footage, but you are with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and who's like the co-pilot and I can't remember the actor's name who plays the main pilot, but he's basically a pilot in Berlin, and they experience a terrorist attack mid-flight. But the way it's done and the way it's depicted, it's very, very well handled. It's not sort of crass or cheesy. Like it's very believable and grounded in reality. And it's just about his character struggling to cope with the fact that the guys outside are trying to break through the door during the course of the whole film, and him dealing with the attack that takes place. Brilliant performance from him.
It's not like a 9/11 film. It's just no,
it's just a sort of post 9/11 thing. I mean, yeah, just a nice little film, like well put together, really well directed, nicely acted. I really enjoyed it, and Amazon suggested to me afterwards because of that Air Force One.
Oh, brilliant!
Which I'd never seen before, and I'd always wanted to get around to seeing. So a week or so later, I ended up putting that on, and I found that hilarious.
My old man would be proud of you.
Yeah.
He's big into airplanes, and he's big into ridiculous action disaster movie things. Yeah.
I just love how that just never, like, it was so funny watching that. I just love how it's never addressed once. And I ended up going on Google afterwards, just typing in, like, what happens if you shoot a plane? Like, shoot the interior of a plane. And They can technically get away with it, apparently, according to the science,
Okay.
because unless you shoot a window out in particular, or you shoot any areas of the plane where you might hit a fuel line, and unfortunately a lot of fuel lines do run through quite a lot of areas of the plane anyway. So the idea that you could have a full out sort of like 90s action movie gun battle with assault rifles like
on a plane
against with automatic weapons on a plane against the terrorists, and for you not to hit one of those fuel lines is very unlikely. And they don't ever address it once or mention it. It's just this thing of like, yeah, there's a big ass gunfight on this plane right now. Everybody knows it's going on. It doesn't matter. We don't care that we're on a plane. It's
doesn't
fine.
matter. My dad would tell you we're not supposed to take that movie seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Well, 100% you're not meant to when you've got, sort of magic lines like, get off my plane, going out of Harrison Ford's mouth at the end. Yeah.
I do
very
need to go back
film.
and watch that. It's stupid and it's not exactly my cup of tea, but I do need that kind of ridiculous fun comfort watching now, because that's what I've been doing the last 2 months, is ridiculous fun comfort watching. But yeah. That's a great one. I watched So I went away over Christmas, as I was saying to you. I braved it, got on a plane, went to Spain for a month, and worked a little bit from over there. And when I was there, we watched a little bit of we did the annual Christmas Lord of the Rings extended trilogy. Did that in 2 days this time. I usually do that in an entire day, but we stretched it over 2 days this year. And then when I came back, so I'm at the end of my 14-day quarantine thingy. So in the quarantine, watched all the Star Wars movies that I like, which was the first 6 episodes, essentially. Not that I particularly enjoy Attack of the Clones. But I grew up with those, so they still have a kind of a soft spot. The third one I quite like a lot, The Revenge of the Sith, and then the first one has Darth Maul, and that's basically, I fast forward to that scene and I watch that. But yeah, it was full of comfort watching. But I did watch one new thing that I can talk more about, and it was a recommendation of yours from way back before we started doing the podcast. And since I now have my Amazon Prime subscription, Dean, so I watched Upload and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. And what I loved most about it wasn't the conceptual idea, wasn't the really curious, sci-fi ideas that it had, or the characters. I love the tone because it's not a tone that you expect for the kind of story it's telling. I love that it played with all of these ideas in not quite a satirical way, not quite a sarcastic way, but definitely had fun with it. And it was still very heartfelt and very touching at some times, It was very I definitely found some episodes very moving, but I had a ton of fun with it. Also, I didn't know that Stephen Amell, who plays Green Arrow on the Arrow show, had a brother or cousin, I think. Robbie Amell, who plays the protagonist in Upload, is apparently Stephen Amell's cousin and looks exactly like Arrow from the Arrow show. Okay. I couldn't stop seeing it. But anyway, that's a side note. So just to give people a little general gist, Upload, you can find it on Amazon Prime, is a show where it's set a good few years in the future, maybe not too far in the future, maybe like 10, 15 years in the future, where society have discovered how to upload our consciousness into like the cloud, into a nice idyllic little spot, basically for when you die. And this guy, this tech guy, a coder, suddenly dies and is uploaded by his girlfriend into Lakeview, this idyllic little kind of what is essentially a retirement home for dead people. And it's bizarre. It's just so bizarre and absurd. But it plays with it in such a funny, touching, hilarious way. And I found it, not that I didn't find it original, I found it like an elongated episode of Black Mirror or Twilight Zone or something like that. And I think there is an episode of Black Mirror that definitely I kept being reminded of. It's the San Junipero episode.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I really liked what these guys in Upload did with it. So you get the woman who works for the company called Horizon. They're basically played off like major corporation, a major tech conglomerate of the future.
She's like the tech support, isn't she?
Yeah, she's the tech support. Customer. She's basically what we do for a living. And so I definitely related to her character quite a bit. She is in charge of uploading our protagonist's consciousness into the Horizon database, into Lakeview, into this retirement home. So she kind of helps him acclimatize to the environment and make sure everything's like running smoothly and all that kind of stuff. And as we go on, we see them kind of developing a bond and discussing kind of big philosophical ideas about mortality and, what life means and what death means and what consciousness is versus what being alive is, and all of these cool little ideas. But it never gets too, not that it doesn't get too deep, it doesn't get too heady, it doesn't get a bit too preachy. It just leaves the ideas there for you to think about in a very light and humorous way. And I really, really like that, because 9 times out of 10, that concept or that idea will get dealt with in a very serious, depressing way in this dystopian sci-fi with rain and Blade Runner colours and everybody's miserable, and, But it was just so much fun to watch. It was so refreshing. I don't know. I felt like it was probably one of my favourite new TV shows that I've watched in the last couple of years. It's only 10 episodes long, and all the episodes are half an hour, so go watch it. But yeah, and I watched it based on your recommendation to me a few months back now, maybe like 6 months ago. You might have mentioned it to me, but loved it.
Yeah, I love that balance. Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I love that balance, like you say, between the fact that it's quite sincere and it's quite heartfelt at times, and it does that really well. But it balances that with the tone of humour that you mentioned. To me, reminded me of like, it's almost like a Zucker Brothers comedy, like Airplane and those kind of like really silly spoof movies.
Absurd,
It's got that absolute like silliness about the humour in it that just, in a way, like grounds it and makes it even more human. The fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously, it makes the moments where you care about the character like resonate even more, and it feels more true. Like, instead of like those two things clashing with each other. And I don't think it got. When I kind of looked up reviews afterwards, I enjoyed it so much, and then I was quite shocked to find the internet and a lot of critics and stuff not really gelling with the comedy, and like not saying it was very funny and stuff. And I was like, I can't understand what. Is it just that the comedy's too old-fashioned for it? Like, do people just not enjoy silly anymore for the sake of silliness? Like, what is it just not in vogue at the moment to do that type of humour?
It's fashionable to take oneself far too seriously these days. And me being me, do not take a lot seriously. It was right up my alley. But it's not silly for the sake of being silly. It's silly to poke fun at ourselves, and I like that. Or silly to poke fun at big corporations and what they do with, life and how they push society in different directions. It's just, it's very, very, very clever. And that's the kind of comedy that I enjoy. I tend to enjoy. It's not slapsticky in any way. It's the characters are real and vulnerable, and they show themselves at their most vulnerable states, you know, like there's even that scene where his new best friend in Lakeview is like dancing in front of the mirror and singing in the shower because he's an army veteran who lost his legs, and now that he's uploaded into this world, he's got legs back, and he's just fucking delighted about that, and he's there singing around. He's just being human, you know. It captures that idea of these people are still human beings, you know. And I think it's just fascinating. Like it makes you think about it after the episode, but while you're watching the episode, you're just having fun with these real people. And they also give every single character depth. Every single character has a bit of depth to them. And none of them are like one-dimensional. So even the bitch girlfriend who I couldn't stand, towards the end I'm like, oh my, I really, really feel for you because of the environment that you've been raised in, you know? It's brilliant. Loved it. I actually don't have any complaints.
When not to spoil it for anybody, like there is this, I mean, we're not spoiled it because like the whole concept starts off with the fact that he's dead, like you say. But for me, when it clicked that it was like, I thought, oh, this is something different. This is quite special, like compared to like a typical sitcom. It was the funeral scene. Like I can't remember what episode that's in at the start, but the minute you had that funeral scene. And the way that, like, not only was it just like absolutely laugh out loud, hilarious at times, that funeral scene, but it was like really moving and really upsetting to watch, and kind of like just this brilliant balance between like you just feeling really sorry for that character whilst it's all going on, and just it's not that kind of like awkward comedy of like it's not the kind of like the nature of, and I still like that type of, I like so many different types of comedy, like The Office and stuff has that kind of element where you kind of like you feel like you're very tense and awkward at times with the humour, and like people like say it's like cringe comedy, but it's not that kind of tone. There's something different going on with this. Like it's got its own thing going on, and I don't know. You're just really feeling for characters at the same time that you're just laughing your head off at what you're seeing because it's so absurd. Like
my biggest like takeaway from it is, you know, great sci-fi will kind of hold up a mirror to society and say, look at how ridiculous yous are being, you know? And I like my biggest takeaway from it was, you know, how, it's not overly cynical at all, but how like technology and the way we think about things in society now is bringing us further and further away from reality and humanity of, you know, things, and not everything has a perfect filter. We're all just ridiculous beings, you know. Everybody, no matter how great your life is, has to go to the Jacks and take a shit every once in a while. You know, we're all the same. And I like that it dealt with that, but it didn't preach it to you. It just dealt with that by showing you real people and real vulnerabilities through ridiculous comedy, you know? Yeah. And not that it's overly slapstick, like I said. It deals with it like in a real fashion. Like, I didn't expect anyone's reactions to any of the humorous elements to be outrageous or just for, they're just playing it up or going over the top there or anything like that. It was very normal. It was, you know, I love the little kid who is in Lakeview and technically
such a great character.
Technically his consciousness is now like 8, 19 or 20 or something, but he's still 11 years old, which was the age when he died. And he's got this weird balance of like angsty late teen, young adult, but he's still like 10 years old. And it's fantastic. That character is just brilliant. Who else? The boss of the tech firm, I think, is a hilarious character and perfect example of modern day tech management. Not to besmirch anyone, but it's just It's just brilliant. I had so much fun with that character. I just found a lot of it extremely relatable on all sides. Everybody seems relatable in one way or another.
Yeah.
In a certain aspect. So yeah, I really.
It's a very
really
exciting watch as well, isn't it? Like towards the end, like I cannot wait to see what they say. I really hope it's not going to be one of those shows that like didn't really land so well with people and it gets axed, especially with COVID and kind of funding going towards shows that might not have been too successful. Like I really hope it keeps going because I would love to see the second season of that show. It'd be such a shame if it did get one.
I looked it up provisionally. It's still on for January 2022, season 2. So hopefully we still get it. But I also love that it kind of turned into a little bit of a murder mystery. You know, so the circumstances surrounding our protagonist's death start to get questioned a little bit, and it's very good. I also love the private investigator character that the family hire. Just a hilarious character. But yeah, I think season 2 will definitely be one to watch for that one, and hopefully it comes out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So that was at least the first, you know, new thing outside of all the comfort watching that I was doing. But I spent the rest of the time over the last month or so, we'll say delving into the typical sci-fi fantasy superhero world that I like to do when, especially when doing a 14-day quarantine. I'll revert back to my comfort stuff. So I actually read some Star Wars comics as well, which were very good. They took away the sour taste of the new movies and made me feel like I was reading something like the original trilogy, or at least the fun silliness of the prequel trilogy, you know. At least had some of that playfulness, you know. Unlike those that will not be named. But yeah, that kind of vibe was what I went for the rest of the time. I don't know, what else were you up to over the last month or so?
It's funny that you mentioned the Star Wars movies, actually, the prequels, because to sort of transition from when I was talking about my planes experience, I definitely think something in my subconscious is telling me to leave the house.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what's been going on. There's got to be some reason why getting on an aeroplane resonated with me so much, and then to sort of expand from that and to connect with Star Wars as well. My next door neighbour mentioned that he could loan me the Long Way series with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, where they travel around the world. 3 seasons of that. So you've got the long way round, and then you've got the long way down, and then you've got the long way up. And there's a gap of about 10 years between.
Yeah.
I think of roughly maybe 12 years or something between the second one and the third one. And it's quite a fascinating little time capsule of a show, actually. It's really interesting because, as well as the fact that they're both really enjoyable to watch on screen together, like their friendship and stuff is just immediately like hooks you in. It's very you can tell that they're very close, and that's really enjoyable to watch on screen. For me, it's one of the most fascinating examples of, if you wanted to watch something that perfectly depicts the transition in the world that we live in within 10 years so dramatically, such a big shift in how television itself is produced, and how fashions and people change and their lives change. Not only do they as people change very differently between that span of like the second season and the third season, because the third season is, I think, was made in 2019 and was made for Apple TV at the time. So it's funded by Apple. And I'm not sure who originally broadcast the original shows. Maybe it was BBC or somebody. I'm not 100%. But when you see you've got exactly the same production team working on it, exactly the same crew members, and like talking about the production is such a key part of the show in how it's edited as well. Yeah, it's really interesting watching the same thing play out, but with brand new cameras and better sound, and just them, like their hairstyles and their fashions change and their personas and stuff change, and it's just. out of anything I've seen, maybe the movie Boyhood taps into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Shows you just how much you don't really think about it until you see it on screen in that way. And it's not quite the same when people fake it, when they try and like do a period piece and they kind of set it 10 years ago, and they kind of like, to actually watch it for real, like transitioning on screen in front of your eyes, is fascinating. And I know most people wouldn't have experienced the show that way. They would have watched it on TV when it's broadcast. I just never got around to seeing it. But just sitting down through lockdown and experiencing that way, it took me aback a bit. I was like, wow, things have moved on so much in 10 years.
Yeah.
Where the hell are we going to be 10 years after that? Who knows?
Who knows? I'm just worrying about where we're going to be in 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I loved it. Yeah, it's a great show.
I love. I was about to say Ian. Ewan McGregor. I just think when he's acting and when he's not acting, he's probably one of the most likable, charismatic movie stars. You know, he just genuinely seems to be genuine. Yeah, and I think I watched the first season of that, which I think is The Long Way Around. That might have been early 2000s maybe, or late 90s, was it?
Yeah, so late early 2000s, I think.
Early 2000s,
because like I say, there's a 12-year gap, I'm sure, from like the second season to that one. I can't. My maths is terrible. I can't work it out. But yeah,
so it was probably like, say, 2002, 3-ish for the first season, 2007, and then 2019.
Something like that. Yeah. I think that's when we're talking. But like just because this is just coincidence from when they broadcasted, but that also perfectly mirrors really just like the massive transition in the internet age between kind of like the change in the internet age, where you went from kind of like the first sort of early stage of internet use, like throughout the 90s, through to like I can't remember the term for it, but like the second stage of when you kind of like things like Google emerge and Facebook emerges, and we kind of like transition there, and technology kind of moves on that way as well. So like the shows in an accidental way kind of like mirror that change as well, which was interesting to watch. But it definitely made me want to leave the house and see different parts of the world.
You know what you should watch now? You should watch Billy Connolly's world tour of New Zealand and Scotland and Ireland and all those.
Definitely should, yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
They're good fun. You reminded me of that, because I used to watch those as well, and I actually watched an old like Billy Connolly live in Dublin show there recently, and I was flicking through my hard drive, and I had his world tour shows, and he did one, and the first one I think he did was in 1995, which is the year I was born, and then the last one he did was like 2007 or something like that. So it would be cool to go back and watch him do that, because he does the same thing. He goes around on a motorbike, and you get little bits of his stand-up shows from each place that he's visiting, and it's Billy Connolly, so it's going to be entertaining, you know. But yeah, two Scots on a motorbike riding around.
It's a good format.
Yeah. There's a trope for you.
I want to see Limmy. I want to see Limmy jump on a motorbike for me and make maybe just Twitch stream it or something. That'd be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that. TV show wise though, as well, like some that I actually checked out that was broadcast right towards the end of the year. Just ended up being, I don't know what it is about me, just catching things right at the end, and they turn out to be my favourites. But I watched on the iPlayer We Are Who We Are, which was a TV series by, I'm going to definitely mispronounce the guy's surname, Luca Guadagnino, is it? Luca
Guadagnino.
Yeah, you will definitely pronounce it better than I can. The director of Call Me By Your Name, and the remake, which I've not seen, by the way, and the remake of Suspiria, which I have seen and have mixed feelings about, and love some of it and not so much other parts. But I was really blown away by this, because I've not seen Call Me By Your Name, so I'm guessing it might share a lot of those qualities that this show has. But the show itself is about a teenage boy an American boy growing up in a military base in Italy somewhere.
Yeah.
And just about like his experience with the other teenagers on the base and dealing with the difficulties of his sexuality and just growing up on the base, and just this really fascinating like microcosm of like how like American culture would exist in this little bubble within Italy, and just the way that's depicted is absolutely fascinating. And from the filmmaking level, like for the TV show, like that's what really took me aback, is like just how this is made is entirely like the star of the show, like the reason to watch it. It's hard to explain with the plot or kind of give you reasons why you might want to invest in it, when I just say, well, it's just about a kid who, to be fair, comes across as a little bit of a shit in it. Like he's hard to like to start off with. Yeah. He's a little bit of a brat and he's a spoilt teenager, and it's hard to attach to him. But then it's made with such compassion and empathy towards its characters that you completely feel like you know him by the end and you understand his world, and the way he shoots it and the way he sound mixes and everything, it's just, you entirely feel like you're there in the environments, immersed in the world with the characters. It completely takes you to a place and time like you are really in there. It's so atmospheric. It's so beautifully created. Yeah. Really, really impressed me. The strongest TV series of that year for me. Worth checking out.
What was it called? We Are Who We Are?
We Are Who We Are.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've just made a note of that on my phone.
Yeah. Loved it.
Very cool. I think that's pretty much everything that we've done in the last 2 months now, isn't it, Dean? We've talked about it. We've talked about a lot of shit now. Jeez, I just realised how much stuff I've actually done in the last 2 months. When you don't leave the house, you get a lot done, don't you?
It's very true, yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else left that I left out, or I could probably save them for future podcasts if I've missed anything and maybe recommend a thing or two. But no, I'm looking forward to getting into the next show now that you recommended, The Halt and Catch Fire. I hope you enjoyed that. I think some of the themes of Upload that you mentioned, the things that you liked about the themes of Upload, will actually resonate watching that show as well. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, there's definitely some sort of theme overlaps there. Very cool. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the bonus, and we made up for lost time. Yeah, we did a little bit of extra rambling today for you, but we were not only catching up with all of you guys, but we were kind of catching up with each other as well, because we haven't been able to talk much. But, that's very true, yeah. So I hope everybody enjoyed. We won't be as long the next time around. Yes. No, we won't. This is true. Okay, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you soon. Bye-bye. See you guys.